What the heck happened to Pagani? You know it as one of, if not the most exclusive Italian brands to ever grace the earth. But the glitz and glamour of today's Pagani often overshadows the struggle, rejection, and obsession with the balance between science and art that one man had. His name is on the car, folks, Horacio Pagani. This is the complete rundown of Pagani, one man turned down by one of Italy's most legendary companies who proved them wrong by creating the most stunning automobiles on the planet. Yeah, I just said that. Like, subscribe, and let's go. Horacio, like any automotive genius, started his obsession as a wee lad. His addiction was instant. This kid was making homemade mini bikes and dune buggies from cheap, broken spare parts that he could find in junkyards. I mean, I couldn't even build a bench at my current age, let alone a fully working buggy as a teenager. Damn. And funny enough, when Pagani opened his first one-man shop, the first customer orders were for things like cargo vans and, yes, a bench. That is real. But if you can believe it, Pagani wasn't in this for the benches. He was a car guy who literally studied Leonardo da Vinci, for God's sake. He was just getting started. And that's when he built the Pagani F2 race car. This project took something like 5,000 hours of work for Horacio to complete, but it totally paid off, as he found not only a driver, but also the recognition of Bertone Design, the design house for Lamborghini. And as fate would have it, in the mid-1980s, he was offered a position to work on a project that would have been any designer's wet dream, the Lamborghini Countach Evolution. Yeah, there was a big issue though. Horacio was dead set on using composite materials like carbon fiber to construct the prototype. Lamborghini would need to buy an autoclave factory to produce the materials. Lamborghini literally told Horacio, if Ferrari isn't doing it, neither are we. So, Pagani? Well, he did it anyway. And although the Evolution would never see production, he continued with his team to design new components of the car that would later prove to be critical in the development of cars like the Lamborghini Diablo and the, ever heard of it, Gallardo? One of the best Lambos ever built, that baby bull? Yeah. Later, in the 1990s, disaster struck. Chrysler, yes Chrysler, the parent company of Lamborghini, was about to go under. And though he had contributed all he could, he knew none of his own projects were going to be fully realized there. So, he left. And after establishing his own company, Modena Design, and producing materials for F1 cars and planes to make enough money, he could finally fulfill his dream, building his own supercar, a car that came to be known as the Zonda. Okay, first off, what the hell does Zonda even mean? It sounds like how Nicki Minaj would pronounce Honda.
Zonda.
But unfortunately or fortunately, Nicki wasn't around at the time, and it is far more dramatic, of course. Zonda is the name of an Airstream. No, not the one that a hippie drives, but an actual Airstream that flows in the Andes mountain range in Argentina, the place where Horacio was born. And remember, folks, this project was his life, and the moniker of his first car that would sit next to his own family name also had to be close to home. Literally. And speaking of the Zonda project being his actual life, for the first 4 years of development, Horacio funded the operation completely on his own. And you think that maybe Lamborghini would take him back if the project failed? Try a resounding ciao! There was no fallback plan for Mr. Pagani, so in order for this to work, he needed friends, like big friends, like Mercedes-Benz type friends. And in that same year, after convincing Mercedes-Benz of his plan for the Zonda, they agreed to be Pagani's sole engine supplier, which probably saved him hundreds of millions in R&D. So with that checked off the list, next, the body. Considering Horacio's love for Juan Manuel Fanijo, me. Considering Horacio's love for Juan Manuel Fanijo and his first big automotive project being an F2 race car, it's not hard to believe that the Zonda's design language was all racing, baby. But while race cars are certainly cool, they are definitely more functional than anything. And Horacio had to give this car some appeal, if you know what I mean. Let me read you something directly from Pagani's own website to describe what they were going for. Horacio thought of combining the sinuosity of a curvy woman with the aggressive look of a fighter jet. Horacio, we would get along just fine. And even though he was from Argentina, there was no doubt that his company was Italian. Anyways, to construct the seductive yet spicy Italian, Horacio went back to the very thing that nearly destroyed his career: carbon fiber. But this time, he was in charge, and they went all out. The entire body of the Zonda is handcrafted with the stuff. Nose to nuts, folks. But it did not stop there. Even a bunch of the frame components and mechanical bits were also carbon fiber. Horacio wasn't settling for anything with the Zonda. This was his first masterpiece. And after 5 long years of development, design, and probably a severely unhealthy amount of fine Italian espresso, they went to the 1999 Geneva Auto Show right before Y2K. They presented this. Pretty damn curvy, am I right? Officially named the Pagani Zonda C12, Horacio's dream had become a reality. Love this guy. And as the name suggests, this thing had a mid-mounted 6-liter Mercedes V12 that produced 394 horses. That might not sound like a lot, but this nearly 400-pound rocket ship only weighed 2,700 pounds. And to make it even more special, a 5-speed manual was connected to that incredible engine. Oh, by the way, just take a listen. It had double A-arm suspension with hydraulic dampers, big vented bimbo brakes, Brembos, and some of the sweetest good old rack and pinion steering known to mankind. But what made this car stand out was Horacio's commitment to detail from the driver's POV. The fighter jet inspiration can be found pretty much anywhere, from the seats to the air vents that look just like a jet engine. Which, pause real quick, because we just did a rundown on the McLaren F1 that you'll love right up here, which that car was actually inspired by fighter jets as well. Anyway, it just seems like a perfect distillation of late 1990s futurism. And throughout the 2000s, there was a million freaking versions of the Zonda. I mean, just look at this. This is the full list of all the different versions of the Zonda. Yes, there are 40 different versions, including production cars, one-off specials, and made-to-order custom cars as well. But to just simplify, let's look at a couple of the really important ones. The first big change was the one right after the original, the Zonda S. This debuted with a bigger 7-liter AMG V12, making 555 horses and a ridiculous 750 foot-pounds. And the S now had pull rod independent suspension with Olin shocks and a new 6-speed manual transmission. Pagani also released the Zonda F, a tribute to Horacio's hero, F1 champ, and now a very close friend, Juan Manuel Fangio. That doesn't get old. It had to be special. I mean, they were Eskimo bros, by the way. And Pagani turned it up to 11. It kept the manual 6-speed, but the 7-liter V12 now made over 600 horses and more torque. It got a brand new intake manifold, new forged magnesium aluminum wheels, and a redesigned rear wing. But the real badassery comes with the introduction of the Zonda Cinque and the Zonda R. These were straight up race cars, my guy. Even more power, more braking, and sequential gearboxes, and some of the most intimidating looks anyone had ever seen on a race car in 2009. But now it had been 11 long years since the Zonda's initial launch, and as the curtains closed on Act 1, well, Act 2 was poised to be the perfect successor. The Aymara people were indigenous to the South American Andes Mountains, and like many ancient cultures, had their own set of gods to worship. One of the... Yo, what the f*** does this have to do with the Pagani? I mean, the Aymara people didn't have cars, man. Or... did they? As I was saying, one of the gods they worshipped was the god of wind, also known as Huayra. If the Zonda wasn't enough proof to you that Horacio Pagani is spiritual and introspective about the origins of his cars, then the Huayra, that cements it. I mean, damn, this guy dug into the depths of his knowledge about his home country's ancient history to get a name that was good enough for the vehicle. I mean, if only Ford had done something like this when they named the Probe. Like, seriously, Probe? Anyways, just like his naming scheme came from a long time ago, the Huayra's inception actually starts way back before 2011 when it was first unveiled. In fact, Horacio began planning the Zonda's successor in 2003, just a few years after the Zonda hit the streets. But if the Zonda was Horacio's way of cracking the door into the industry, the Huayra was going to be lifting the proverbial garage door of his true talent, revealing what I believe to be his magnum opus. Pagani's own website describes the design philosophy of the Huayra as elegant and muscular, and I'm gonna have to agree with them. Just take a second to look at this thing, or just Google high-res photos of this body. Not only could you stare at it for hours, but you can see the natural progression they took from the sleek yet sharp Zonda and massaged the design into something a little bit more curvaceous and presence-demanding, which is called the Huayra. And from a development standpoint, they also took every important lesson from the Zonda and applied it to the new car. Though just about everything was all brand new. The frame structure, the headlights, engine bay, and many more were emulated after the Zonda, but redesigned and improved for modern standards. And since I've teased you enough, let's talk about the oily bits, shall we? Well, the Mercedes-AMG partnership was once again on full display, this time with a 6-liter twin-turbo V12 that made 730 freaking horses. And coupled with that iconic quad exhaust, this thing sounds like an airplane taking off. Sound please. All that power went through a 7-speed sequential gearbox and through this sub 3,000 pound work of art from 0 to 60 in just 2.8 seconds. But I don't know about you, because a long time ago when I first heard about this car, all anyone ever talked about was the interior. You thought the Zondas was cool? The Huayra is up there as one of the most unique and special interiors ever fitted to any car ever. Every switch, every dial, every surface, and every single little detail is made in conjunction with the vision of this car in mind. The gauges look like some sort of modern steampunk instrument cluster on a bomber plane. I mean, just look at the gear knob. The exposed mechanisms and level of metal work is exquisite, and it can be found on every single place in the car. Hell, even the cigarette lighter has a perfectly machined aluminum bezel around it. If I die before getting to sit in one of these, and I was so close a couple years ago, please kill me again. Please? Anyways, the Huayra also had some special editions, but it didn't have a whole book full of them like the Zonda, thank God. The first big continuation of the Huayra was the BC. And no, it doesn't stand for British Columbia like I thought it did. And of course, since this is Horacio Pagani, its name was meaningful to him personally. Its name is the initials of Benny Caiola, the very first customer of Pagani Automobili and a close friend to Horacio. Cute, huh? They were Eskimo bros though. Anyways, the BC wasn't just a nod to their full bromance. This was a full upgrade to the existing Huayra. I mean, why not? This had an 800 horsepower version of the 6-liter V12 with a 7-speed automated manual and a host of aerodynamic upgrades that were done in a wind tunnel. Fun fact, I actually drove this car in Forza Horizon. So yeah, I think I'm qualified to tell you this thing has aero that is chef's kiss. There were, of course, roadster versions of the regular Huayra and the BC in the mid to late 2010s, and of course, my personal favorite, the long-tail Huayra Codalunga, of which only 5 were ever made, but in 2021, Pagani unveiled the successor to the wicked-looking Zonda R, the Huayra R. They gave this the same incredible treatment, more power, more revs, and a ton more aero to create a car so devilish, you can't even drive it on the streets. And the R, as we know it, rounded out the era of the Huayra. It took 12 years to get from the Zonda to the Huayra, and in 2023, exactly 12 years after the legendary introduction of the Huayra, Pagani unveiled their latest work of art for the world, and it's called the Utopia. See, now, this is a word I actually know. See? Smart, right? But I want to read a particularly well-written quote from Pagani themselves about why they chose this name. For the philosopher Thomas More in 1516, Utopia was a place that did not exist, and ever since the name has been given to the idealized places of which we dream, but for those who make their own future, for creators, Utopia exists, and it's merely a case of finding it. And after more than 4,000 design drawings, 10 scale models, and 6 long years, Horacio found his Utopia. If the Zonda was a crack in the door, and the Huayra was the wide open garage of his genius, the Utopia is the posters on that garage wall, the seemingly achievable dream that Horacio had stared at his whole life. This car came out in 2023, an era when most hypercars had already been completely hybridized and digitized. And just as the Utopia name represents the seemingly unachievable, Horacio decided to go against the tide of the industry and put a twin-turbo V12 in the thing. No electric motors, no hybrid assists, or heavy batteries. Just hunk of a V12 and some boost that creates 850 glorious horses. And I'll do you one even better. The Utopia comes with a 7-speed gated manual transmission, making it the only V12 powered car to come with a 7-speed manual since the Aston Martin V12 Vantage S in 2017. This is special stuff, folks. I mean, who knew that Pagani would be sticking it to the digital overlords of the modern car industry? Well, maybe it makes more sense when you start to think about it. I mean, since his time at Lamborghini 40 years ago, Horacio Pagani has always strived for modern innovation. But his dedication to the passion and art that we have all seen in his cars has never wavered. And it manifests itself in things like a non-hybrid manual V12 hypercar in the 2020s. It's only a person like Horacio and maybe Gordon Murray who will always make sure our dream cars are something we'd actually enjoy driving if we ever get the chance. And let's hope that Mr. Pagani continues to do this another 40 years down the road. And guys, I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it, because Horacio Pagani is the man. If you enjoyed, please like, subscribe, and share it with some friends. This rundown series, that's what's up. So check out the McLaren F1 rundown up here, or check out whatever YouTube recommends you watch next down here. I'm Brad, this is Ideal. We'll see you next week, and promise me one thing, keep living the ideal lifestyle. Love you. A latte.